CBS News is projecting President-elect Joe Biden won Georgia. Right now, Georgia's vote is under a recount. It is likely to be the site of a showdown for Senate control in January. CBS News is also projecting President Trump as the winner of North Carolina. That is the final state to swing the president's way. This now gives Mr. Biden a total of 306 electoral votes to the president's 232 electoral votes. That is the same margin with which Mr. Trump won the race 4 years ago. So let's bring in Sean Sullivan now. He's a CBSN political contributor and national politics reporter for The Washington Post. Hi, Sean. Great to see you. So Georgia is in a recount, and the two Senate races are going to a runoff. But why did it take so long for North Carolina to finally be called?
Well, Tanya, when you look at how long these states are taking to tally these ballots, you've got to keep in mind what the local laws are in terms of when ballots can be cast. And so in North Carolina, this was a state that you could cast ballots up until Election Day, and election officials were actually tallying those ballots even after Election Day. So it took them some time to go through all of these ballots. And of course, the fact that the margin was so close put the state in a position that nobody felt like it could be called or declared before that time. So a combination of a close race and state-specific laws that kept the count going later than it might have in some other states was why we saw North Carolina take as long as it did.
And so how much focus can move to Georgia now that the presidential race looks more settled?
A huge amount of focus in both parties right now is centering in Georgia. This is the premier place. This is sort of the epicenter of political combat right now for the two parties. You're starting to see on both sides these parties ramp up. They're preparing to spend millions, probably tens of millions, if not more, on these two races because the fate of the Senate majority is going to be at stake here. And by extension, the fate of the Biden presidency. Will he be able to confirm the cabinet appointees he wants? Will he be able to pass the agenda that he wants to pass? A lot of that could rest on these races. And, you know, the fact that this is happening in a state that was so closely divided, we see the margin right there. Almost a 50-50 race between Trump and Biden shows how competitive this state can be. So both sides are trying to recalibrate, trying to figure out what the lessons that were learned in the November 3rd election are, how they can be applied in January and how they can adapt. And one question right now on the Republican side that I'm hearing from my sources is, you know, how can they get the Trump base to turn out if President Trump is not on the ballot? It's one thing when there's a presidential race at stake, when he's running against Joe Biden, but Republican strategists believe they need a lot of these voters to turn out in January to help them win these runoffs. But what will happen with Trump not on the ballot? So that's something they are trying to look at right now. It's also a potential challenge on the Democratic side because a big motivator for Democratic voters in the November 3rd election was to vote against Trump, to remove Trump from office. And so that's not in the mix either for Democratic voters. So are Democrats going to be able to motivate their base to turn out? So there's a lot of questions right now, but certainly the epicenter of national politics right now is Georgia. And given the fact that we've seen the dust sort of settle, Tanya, in the presidential race, I think we can expect a huge amount of focus from both sides in the coming days and weeks in Georgia.
And like you said, both sides need to mobilize voters. Talk to us about how significant it is that Georgia has gone to a Democratic presidential candidate, something that the state has not done since 1992 when it went to Bill Clinton.
It's very, very significant. In recent years, a lot of Democratic strategists have looked at Georgia. They've looked at the demographic changes in the state, and they said, boy, this is a state we feel like we could put in our category, in our win category, but it hasn't happened yet. They've gotten close, but until now, it hasn't ever materialized. And if you remember 2 years ago, there was a lot of excitement about Stacey Abrams, the gubernatorial candidate there. She almost won that race, but she didn't quite win it. There have been other near misses for the party. So for them to win a presidential race is a hugely significant occurrence, and one that party officials hope will begin a broader trend in the future of Sun Belt states trending toward Democrats. So states like Arizona, and they hope Texas, in the future will start becoming more and more Democratic, and they feel like they can create a new path to the presidency that runs through these states. So it certainly is a significant occurrence. On the Republican side, Republicans are looking at this and saying, look, we want to make sure this is a fluke. We want to make sure that this is something that doesn't happen again because we need Georgia to protect our majorities. We need Georgia at the presidential level. So the question moving forward is this sort of a one-off, or do we start to see Georgia become very, very competitive at the presidential level? All indicators are that it is headed toward the direction of being competitive for years to come.
And Sean, yesterday, CBS News projected Arizona for President-elect Biden, and the Trump campaign abandoned a lawsuit there. What's your take on all of these legal challenges? Are they just one by one running their course?
Well, it looks right now that they are not making a lot of headway with any of these legal challenges. It's not looking likely that in any of these states where they are putting up these legal challenges that they're going to be able to overturn these margins. Even Republicans will privately acknowledge, look, this is too steep a hill to climb in a lot of places. And when you look at a state like Arizona, that's a really significant win for Joe Biden. This is another Sun Belt state, as we talked about, that was a Republican state, that was a Trump state, a state where John McCain was senator for a long time, where Senator Jeff Flake was senator, a very conservative senator there. The fact that Democrats are having success in Arizona is a very welcome sign for the party. They are hoping, like Georgia, that they can make this a state that year in and year out is part of their category of states that they look at as, hey, we can compete here no matter the climate. But yeah, when it comes to the lawsuits right now for the president and his team, there really just aren't any signs that any of these things are going to work out in a way that overturns the margins of victory that we see in these states for Joe Biden.
All right. Well, Sean Sullivan, thank you so much with the latest on the 2020 election. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tanya.